Hey, Sean's here, and this will be my guide to Task 5 of the RHCSA lab practice. Now, this is a pretty simple lab overall, pretty much as quick as the other one, just slightly longer. So, as long as you did the previous configuration correctly, should be a pretty simple task overall. We'll go ahead and show what that looks like, just in case you forgot. So, we'll go ahead and run this on this config right here, and you can see that permit root login is set to yes. Make sure it is a lowercase y. A capital uppercase Y will cause it not to work. I think in the previous video I set it to an uppercase Y, so make sure you don't do that because that'll cause it not to work. And then of course after you do that, you just want to start the SSD service, and then you can check that it is up by running that. See 4 seconds ago that it was properly restarted. So now that we've proved that, we will actually get the SSH connection started. So the first thing you're going to do is create an SSH key. You just do this simply with ssh-keygen, and you can add some extra flags and whatnot to specify the encryption strength. Like for example, you could set it to RSA, and that's a pretty strong algorithm. There are better, but that's a pretty common one. And then you could set the bit length of it, for example, to like 4096, which is also a common security strength for the SSH keys. In a secure enterprise environment, you probably want to go with stronger than that, but for this, we'll just go with the default. So go ahead, create the key pair. It'll ask you if you want to name the file. For this, we don't really need to, so we're just going to hit enter. Then it'll ask you for a passphrase. For this, we're not going to enter anything, but in a production environment, you would typically add a passphrase as well, just for an additional layer of security. Of course, you would probably want to make it something not similar to the user account password. You would want to make it some separate, strong, long password. We'll go ahead and enter, and then it's generated the key pair. You'll see the random art image. Don't need to really consider that. That's just the art image for the SHA-256 encryption. Now that the key is generated, we want to go ahead and copy our identity over to the server that we are going to SSH to. So we'll go ahead and run the ssh-copy-id command. And this is a pretty handy command. So you would pass in the parameters just as if you were SSH overing. So if you've never done this before, I hope you have, because this is a pretty important skill and you will be SSHing into servers quite a bit, usually with some additional tools to aid in that, but you'll go ahead and pass the user of the connection session that you are going to create. Obviously, we have enabled root for this task, but you could use theoretically any user on the system as long as you know their password, whatever security credentials they have. So once you've created the user, rather than you've established the user, you'll just use the @ symbol, and then you can use either the host name or the IP address. For this, we're going to use the IP address. That's typically what you would do anyways, since usually when you're SSHing into a server, it's not directly in your LAN. It would be probably in a separate LAN, and then you would have to set up port forwarding so that you could SSH to the router. The router forwards you over to the SSH port that the device is listening on. Now, that's all we have to do here, nothing more than that. It'll go ahead and print this out to the screen. Don't be worried by this. This is just the first time connection kind of like setup that you have to do. You just go ahead, hit yes, and it'll go ahead and copy the key over. Then you just enter the password and you're in. You're not in, but you've copied the ID over to that second server. So now that we've done that, we can actually SCP over to the server the host files that we just created on this. Because if you see here, if we do ls root.ssh, see we have these files created here. This is you can't see me pointing on the screen, so we'll use the mouse. This is the private key. This is the public key that we created. So this is the key pair that we just created. This is what's used to prove that we are RHCSA 9 server 1. That's how the server it's you knows that we are who we say we are, because we just copied these key pairs over here. So they have the public key, so they can match that with our public key when we forge the connection and know that this is what we would actually be using to decrypt the private key. And that's generally how, asymmetric encryption works. Now, the known host file is just so that this server would know that we know them as well. Part of the SSH connection getting sent over. So again, you will do SCP rather, and then the first parameter that you pass is the folder or files on the current host. So we'll say root.ssh, and then we are copying pretty much all these files. So we're just gonna use the wildcard symbol here. That'll copy everything in the directory. And then the second thing you're going to pass is first the typical parameters you would pass if you were SSHing over, because secure copy runs over the same port as SSH, which is port 22, of course. But the second parameter you're going to pass is the IP address or hostname again. So server 2 is at 72, so we will pass that. Now that we have done that, we will use the colon symbol to indicate that we are now passing in a destination directory on the server that we are connecting to. So for this, we are going to choose pretty much the same thing, just SSH, and then make sure you include that trailing slash just to show that we are copying it over to that directory. We'll go ahead and do that. Then you can see every single one of those was copied over. And now that that's done, the only thing we have to do now is go over to the second server. And you can also just see here ls root .sh. You can see that all these got copied over. Remember, we didn't touch this at all the entire time, so this proves that that was done successfully. So we are going to copy our identity over. That way we'll be able to do it too from this server. And of course, we just pass the name of, or rather the IP address of the first server. Go ahead, hit yes. Do that. And now you can freely SSH between these. So I'll show you that right now. Root at 192.8.72. Just have to enter the password and we are in. You can see if we do like this, even though we already have it right there, it even says server 2. If we did this, for example, you would see that this is completely the IP address of the second server, same devices and everything. We can see the files and everything. Just a regular SSH session. If you've never done these, get used to doing these a lot. So we'll go ahead and exit. That'll close the connection to that. And that is the entirety of the task. I'll even show you, we'll be able to SSH over to root 192.168.71. And or same thing there. So yeah, that's how you would do it. We'll go ahead and close that connection as well. That is how you fully configure everything to be set up. That way it's using a key pair to encrypt the connection as well, make it as secure as it possibly can be with SSH. And of course, there are other hardening techniques as well, but that's all we have to do for this task. So I hope you enjoyed it, and on to the next one. Thanks, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. See you in the next.